So jumping right in, it won't let me be great today. There we go. And the slide is not changing for.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's a delay. Okay, jumping right in. Here's an overview of the webinar. So we'll do quick introductions, and we have a new colleague to strategic planning and funding who will be working with developmental education reporting, who we'll introduce shortly. We'll talk about the DEPS background and logistics. We'll give you some best practices for completing the DEPS and how we'll support you through that process. And then we have selected items that we'll be covering to give you a little bit of context on regarding the DEPS. However, again, like I said earlier, if you're just joining us, if you have a specific question regarding a question, feel free to go ahead and type that out in the chat feature, and we'll address it accordingly. And last but not least, we'll offer some time for questions. So at this time, for those who don't know my voice, my name is Keelan Morgan, and I serve as the program specialist for developmental education here at the Higher Education Coordinating Board. And I also have two colleagues in the room who I'll allow to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Melissa Humphreys, and I work in strategic planning and funding. So I deal with the developmental ed data analysis, data reporting, and the email you got about the DEPS was from me. So feel free to shoot me an email or call if you have questions after this webinar.
Hi, my name is Yuji Kim. I'm also a program director at the Strategic Planning and Funding. I've recently joined the team, so I'm looking forward to working with you guys and answering any questions related to data.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And here's my right hands with a reporting unit that specifically works with developmental education. And that's the slide we were supposed to be on with the introductions. Oh. And for those of you, everybody's familiar with Dr. Suzanne Morales-Vale, but she serves as the director of adult and developmental education here at the coordinating board, and she's available to you as a resource as well. So background on the DEPS. First we want you to understand it's required that institutions complete it. So participation in the DEPS is not optional. It's states it's under rule that it must be completed. It's in 2010 to take the place of the submissions of the annual DE plans that were formally submitted to the coordinating board. And as we really talk about the DEPS, it's not really a survey. It's more of an inventory of what's happening in developmental education on each respective campus. But the DEPS supplements information gathered through CBM reporting on the TSI, and it provides contextual information on DE programs across the state and for individual institutions. And one thing about the DEPS is, with the consistency of the questions that we ask over time, we're able to gather longitudinal data for the trends in DE, and thus informs how we make strategic decisions in terms of the direction of developmental education across the state. And note that once we get all of the DEPS in, we will do an analysis of that information, and that report will be made public via our website. And again, it's used for the enhancement of DE programs both at the state and institutional level. The 2019 DEPS, the survey window, you received this on September 11th. It will be due on October 25th. And if my memory serves me correct, that is a Friday by close of business. So make sure that you're gauging your time to completion to make sure that you meet that deadline. If not, you will receive a wonderful email from us that will be escalated to your chief academic officers and up the chain. And again, given that it's per statute that this is required that institutions respond to, we are requesting you to submit the DEPS by the requested deadline. Note the survey has 5 sections. Sections A through C will refer specifically to corequisite models. Section D is new, and it's going to refer to curriculum supports, and I'll get into a little bit of that more detail later. Section E, the college preparatory course, and then Section F is optional. It's just open-ended responses. You'll see the boxes below with section ID and question ID, and as you go through the DEPS, you can always gauge by the section ID and the question ID exactly where you are in the survey. So best practices for completing the DEPS. Distribute hard copies to applicable departments and divisions. We know that when we sent out the primary and secondary contacts for the DEPS, that's relegated to 2 people. However, you do have access to the PDF hard copy via the email that was sent to you. So click on September 11th. So click that link and you can distribute the hard copies to the math department, the English department, if that's where IRW is coming from, and any additional person on your campus that will be responsible for assisting you in compiling data to complete the DEPS. We encourage you to, again, distribute the hard copies, and then once those answers have been supplied, come together as a group to review for the final responses and include your administration in these responses. Everybody, what we've come to learn as we do this work, nobody holds all the pieces to the puzzle. So make sure that, again, you're getting on the appropriate calendars and that you're working with your colleagues in a timely manner to ensure that you have those quality responses. When you get to, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in one of the highlighted questions, but regarding your corequisite enrollment numbers, you must partner. We strongly encourage you to partner with your registrar to ensure that the information that you're reporting matches the CBM data that we're receiving, the official data from your registrar's office. So we have a variety of resources available to you through the DEPS. We have the methodology documents in narrative, and then we also have House Bill 2223 calculation worksheets that are available to you. However, we strongly encourage you to work with your registrar to ensure that the data is consistent that we receive on the DEPS when we go to pull that official data from the CBM. And last but not least, we strongly encourage you to review the glossary linked on the DEPS for defining terms used throughout. For instance, when we say continuous improvement, we define it. And so there's not a question of what that means, although we know in the field to different individuals, it could mean a variety of things, but we're very specific in the definitions and how we want you to approach the questions with the terminology that we use. And last but not least, if you need additional support, we're always here to help. It's not, you're not putting your business out in the street if you call us for help. We're here to help you be successful. So if you need help completing the DEPS, Dr. Melissa Humphreys, myself, Dr. Suzanne Morales-Vale, we're here to help. So now I'll kind of transition into some of the items that we as a team here at the coordinating board thought we should highlight. And again, if you have a question as I go through it, if you have a question in section A and I've already moved on to section B, go ahead and outline that in the conversation and we'll definitely pause to address it. So with question A1, the House Bill 2223 student accounts, this is where earlier I referenced that we really want you to work with your registrar to ensure that these numbers are as accurate as possible. If you are a THECB CRSM grantee, you are very familiar with this process and what it takes to derive or get to your House Bill 2223 percentage. And if you've not already done so, we strongly encourage you to go out and look at the resources that are available to you in the calculation. And even if your IR office is telling you that, oh, well, we only calculate TSI data once a semester, this information should be really on demand because it's quintessential in departments being able to meet the required percentages of House Bill 2223, particularly as it relates to the percentage of students that are required to be enrolled in corequisite models, which for fall 2019, we are at 50%. So 50% of all DE enrollments on your campuses, for with the exception of those who are exempt. So for those students that are subject to House Bill 2223, 50% of those enrollments in developmental education courses, 50% of those students should be enrolled in corequisite models. And again, if you have any questions regarding the actual calculation, feel free to reach out to us. Say anything you wanted to add to that, Melissa?
So there is a link within the actual survey itself to some of the tools that Keelan mentioned, the worksheet and the methodology. And as he mentioned, if your IR comes back and said, oh, these CBM items we don't do till the end of the semester, technically that is correct. They send it to us at the end of the semester. However, it should be in your student information system already because it has to do with enrollments. So we're asking you to the best of your ability, get these numbers for who is enrolled right now. And we give you the CBM items in those worksheets he was mentioning, so you and the IR folks can know exactly what we will use when we calculate them.
And then just to highlight a couple of aspects, I don't expect you in the context of the webinar to become an expert on the calculation. However, the denominator starting there is the total number of students enrolled in developmental education. And again, certain populations are removed, and that's outlined in the methodology. And then the numerator consists of all of the students that are enrolled in a corequisite DE model. And be sure that you review the glossary to fully understand what we count as a corequisite. For instance, we still come across an institution here and there saying that they're doing a corequisite model, but they're still pairing the college level course with the learning support course or the learning frameworks course, that EDU 1300. But under House Bill 2223, that pairing as a corequisite is not allowed. So though we use corequisite as a term of a paired course, note that under House Bill 2223, it's very specific in terms of what can be counted as a corequisite model. Note that the percentage for House Bill 2223 is calculated separately for math and reading and writing, which is IRW for each semester. For IRW, only IRW courses at the highest level are considered for corequisite purposes. So if by chance your institution is still doing a standalone DE reading and or writing course with a college level course, that will not count as a corequisite under House Bill 2223. And note that a student is only counted once in the numerator and denominator, even if they're enrolled in more than one DE course or intervention in that same in the same subject and same semester. And this is actually a hyperlink, and we'll make this available to you. The click here, if you click there, it'll take you out to the coordinating board's website, and you'll have access to those methodology documents. And even if you go out to the Higher Education Coordinating Board's website, if you just search TSI or DE, it'll take you to our webpage, and those resources are located under the heading of House Bill 2223 resources. Anything else to add there, Melissa?
Okay, so Elizabeth has a good question about excluding students who are met. And when Keelan talked earlier about in the denominator, when it starts with students who are NDE, it says with certain student populations removed, and that would include, in your example, Elizabeth, those who are TSI met but still in a DE, even if they're in a co-rec or not. You're correct, they will not be included in the calculation. And that will, if you click on the methodology and the worksheet, we try to be very specific in each of these exclusions. So that's a really good point, to pay attention to the students who will not be counted in that.
And in the worksheet, it walks you through essentially all of the populations that you are to remove from the denominator. Once you get to that final number in the denominator, of those students remaining in the denominator, how many of those students are then enrolled in corequisite models, and that makes up the numerator. Yeah. So I hope that provides a little bit of clarity, but again, strongly encourage you to go out there and look at those resources, and I believe that point would be very, very clear. So the next question that we'll highlight, it states, what is the primary developmental education support offered at your institution to the majority of your students who are not college ready? And this is question pertains to both math, and it's reflected in IRW as well, who are subject to House Bill 2223 but are not placed in a corequisite model. So what we're really getting at there, for those students who are subject to House Bill 2223 but are not placed in a corequisite model, since we're not at 100% implementation, what happens to those students? But note in the selections that if you do not offer DE at your institution, select the last item, and then there's a follow-up question to that to list the 5 institutions that you partner with. So if you have no clue of what I'm talking about in terms of your institution farming out your developmental education, disregard that response. And the ones above will relate to you in terms of how you place your students that are subject to House Bill 2223, but are not placed in a corequisite model for a variety of reasons.
And I will say, you don't see here an option of everyone goes to correct, because you'll only see this question if you give a percentage in the prior question that is less than 100%. So if in the prior question you tell us 100% of your students are in correct, you won't even see this question, so don't worry about it.
The next question that we'll be highlighting, A5, check the following options based on where students scoring levels 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 on the TSIA ABE diagnostic are most often placed or referred to at your institution. This is not a new question, but a modified question from the previous DEPS. In the previous DEPS, we essentially treated this as one large group, like what options were available for ABE levels 1 through 4. But we wanted to get a little bit more granular as we continually work with assisting institutions and strengthening their placement protocols. They notice granularity in terms of the skill level between the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So we really want to tease that out now to see what are those options that are available to the spectrum of ABE levels at your institution.
And I noticed that 5 and 6 is not on there, and I'll just, as a reminder, that's because 5 and 6 are DE level. That's correct, right?
And 5 and 6, they're required to be correct under House Bill 2223, which is ABE level 5-6 is required to be correct under House Bill 22.
Eligible. They're in the eligible population.
Yes, they're subject to House Bill 2223. So in theory, they're required to be correct, but if they're not, and they're enrolled in a developmental education course, it would impact the House Bill 2223 percentage.
But just a reminder, that's why they're not in this question, because they are developmental ed students and are subject to everything.
And note that here, the base NCBO option, you should not have ABE level 5-6 placing into that option. The base NCBO should be reserved for ABE levels 1 and 2. Question A8. Which of the following data-driven efforts to improve corequisites implementation, i.e., and again, the word I used earlier, continuous improvement, activities have you engaged in for the corequisite models you implement at your institution? So when we say data-driven, we're specifically talking about, are you actively pulling data, your IR data, not necessarily what you feel is going on in the context of your courses, but are you having meetings with faculty, with your IR to make those data-driven decisions? Melissa, do you want to give some feedback on the monitor student success measures?
Sure. I mean, it can mean a lot of different things, but what we usually see here is institutions looking at how students do after they complete a corequisite model, or things like comparing students who are in a corequisite model to similar eligible students who are not placed in a corequisite model. So it can look like a few different things, but that is what we typically see when institutions are tracking student success of the corequisite models.
Awesome. And then develop cross-departmental or cross-organizational task groups. That's pretty self-explanatory. Share data and engage key stakeholders in conversations around improvements to instruction. And when we say key stakeholders, we're talking about faculty, we're talking about advisors, we're talking about those individuals who have a direct impact on how students place into your corequisite models, and those who are actually instructing your students while they're in those corequisite models. And that's on both sides of the coin, the developmental education level and the college level, the college credit level.
Yeah, so it's actually pulled out into two.
Yes. And then last but not least, made policy or program changes. If you know that you're digging into your data, and as a result of the data, you're making policy, whether that be institutional, departmental, or program changes, you would select that as well. A10, if an underprepared student enrolled in a DE corequisite model retakes the TSIA after the census date and meets the college readiness benchmark, what is your institution's policy? So we understand that corequisites have two enrollments, one for the DE course and one for the college level course. So the DE course or intervention, and then the college level course. Those are the two distinct enrollments. But we understand that the college level enrollment is not affected, but we're interested in knowing what happens with the DE course. And our strong recommendation is it should not have a punitive impact on the student, because per statute, once the student has demonstrated college readiness, the institution can no longer require the student to engage in developmental education coursework. And this is often a gray area where we individually work with a number of institutions to help them walk through this particular piece, because it's not well defined in rule, but we do understand that in some institutions have implemented policies where if you drop one course, they're automatically dropped from the other. But again, it's our stance that nothing should happen to we understand that nothing should happen to the college level course, that enrollment, but we're really interested in knowing what happens with the DE course enrollment. B3, does your institution currently enroll students in mathematics pathways options? For example, mathematics pathway, statway, quantway. Yes, no, math pathways are under consideration are your potential responses. However, note that when we say math pathways, although that we list mathematics pathways, which is often associated with the data center, and we have statway and quantway, we're really saying, do you differentiate the type of college math needed based on a student's major or degree? And if that answer is yes, your institution essentially participates in math pathways options. However, we don't want you to get caught up on the particular examples that we have listed there. And I'll repeat that one more time, that although we provide those examples, we really are referring to if you differentiate the type of college math needed based on a student's major or degree.
Whether or not you're officially using data
Yes.
centers model or not, we don't care for this question.
Yeah.
If you are differentiating, that's all we want to know.
And then a follow-up to that, what are the considerations for placement of underprepared students into a math pathway? And you will select all that apply. And then B4B is also associated with that one. We want you to upload the guidelines for placement into math pathways for your underprepared students. So considering the guide that your advisors use, like the template they use for placement when advising students, we want a copy of that document. And you can upload it as we recommend you upload it as a PDF file. And that's just to prevent any potential formatting errors with the downloads or anything. And if you do not have a copy of your guidelines, we want you to describe the placement of your underprepared students into a mathematics pathway. Anything else to add there, Melissa?
Nope. If you have issues uploading, just let us know, but it should be pretty easy. Or if you have questions like, I have this document, is this what you're looking for? Just reach out.
And I have section D, curriculum supports there, but it's more of a placeholder just for me to, again, highlight that it is a new section. And within there, we're specifically asking, and I believe it's only a couple of questions in regards to if you use a software solution for the delivery of your developmental education course or intervention, what is it? Oftentimes when we're in the field, we get a number of inquiries from institutions across the state that really want to know what other institutions are doing. So we felt it would be very value added to capture that information on the DEPS and make that available. And in no way is it in a way to where we're going to be promoting one or the other in terms of the software solution that's used. Even if it's a high number of institutions use one, it won't be an official coordinating board recommendation. It'll simply be reporting the data captured from institutions across the state. So just to make that clear when we report that data out. And section E, the college prep course, does question E3 specifically, does the standard for student successful completion of the college preparatory course differ across MOUs? So if you have multiple MOUs with ISDs, what are those thresholds for the student to pass the course locally and get the high school credit? And then we want to know, is there potentially another benchmark to get the exemption?
Actually, this question has to do with differences between MOUs.
My apology. I'm getting ahead of myself,
Yeah.
but that question is, I'm getting ahead of myself, but that question is on there. But does the standard for student successful completion of the college prep course differ across MOUs at face value?
Yes.
So
If you have one with one ISD
Yes.
and another MOU with a different ISD, do they differ, or are you using one standard MOU for everyone, is basically the question.
For instance, we know that some of the educational service centers have really worked with their K-12 partners to make sure or to get an agreed upon MOU for the college prep course, and then the IHEs are actually brought into that conversation to standardize that process. So if that's the model that you're using, in that case, and you're using the same MOU with each of your ISDs, the answer would be no. However, if you're negotiating those terms with each ISD individually, the answer would be yes.
There's a question on if Section E is related to HB5. Yes.
Yes.
So the college prep courses are often also called HB5 courses.
And just know one thing there, as we continue to work with institutions in strengthening developmental education across the board, and as we work with K-12 in the use of the TSIA, we are actually, as part of our statewide plan for developmental education for 2018 to 2023, we actually have a recommendation related to the college prep course. So you'll be hearing from us across the board just in terms of recommendations for IHEs engaging with across that divide, the K-12 on the K-12 side, in terms of how best to use the college prep course in terms of maximizing high school students, maximizing their potential to come to higher ed college ready. And that's only because we know that there are significant differences in graduation rates for those high school students that enter higher ed college ready versus those who do not. So we want to make sure that high school students have every opportunity to demonstrate THECB college readiness prior to entering the doors of your institution. And those are actually all of the questions that we have that we wanted to highlight. And we have our contact information there. And again, this presentation will be made available to you. And at this time, if you have, I see Dr. Walker typing a question now, but if you have any questions, definitely go ahead and start shooting those through, and we'll address them in the order that they come in. And this is actually, it says, do we know the date of the recommendation of the TSIA being administered at the conclusion of the House Bill 5 college prep course? And I'm not sure, I'm going to take a stab at what I think the question is asking. As of now, there's not a requirement, and our recommendation is that it is required. However, it's a win-win for the student. So when we were talking about, when I was talking about earlier, like the different thresholds in the student achieving the exemption, if the student only has one benchmark as per the MOU to get the exemption, the student can still take the TSIA and even if the student didn't pass, that student might, since they completed the college prep course, that student should be guaranteed a spot in a corequisite model whenever they enter the doors of higher education. Let's just say the student passes that particular section of the TSIA. What it does is makes their TSIA exemption more broad and of use to them at any institution across the state versus just locally with the completion of the college prep course at the institution in which the MOU exists. But so when we say, do we know the date of the recommendation of the TSIA?
Put it out there?
It's out there, and it's in our statewide plan for serving underprepared students, and it can be found on the Higher Education Coordinating Board's website for specifically the DE and TSI webpage.
But it is not, it's a recommendation.
It's a
correct?
recommendation.
Yeah, it's not.
Yes, it's not a requirement.
I think another question is coming up.
And just a little bit more background on that. Those recommendations were board approved in the January board meeting.
The next question asks, does the MOU with the school district include partnerships for early college high school? Technically, yes, you could have MOUs for that, but the only one we need you to comment on or answer a question on for DEPS purposes is MOUs having to do with this college prep course / HB5 course. I've heard them called both things regularly, college prep course or HB5. If it could be that in the partnership for early college high schools, it's maybe mixed in to that MOU, which then fine, tell us about the MOU. But it really just needs to be whichever MOU is specifically dealing with college prep courses.
And I see the question from Dr. Walker, will the TSIA assessment be changing anytime? Robin Simmons' question, will the TSI assessment be changing anytime soon? The answer is yes. We're currently in the process of going through the development process of the TSIA 2, which will launch in fall of 2020. I don't want to get into too much detail. We have very specific slides related to that. I don't want to give too much narrative in absence of the slides, just for the sake of saving the confusion, but we will be hosting webinars regarding the implementation and the rollout of the TSIA 2 set for fall 2020 very, very soon. So definitely be on the lookout, housed in the context of all of our professional developments for House Bill 2223 with Austin Community College, Catch the Next, the Texas Association of Community Colleges, and our most recent partner, the Texas Academic Advising Network. This information on the TSIA 2 will be included in all of those trainings, and we'll be getting information to you out about that very, very soon. But again, just to recap, the TSIA will be changing in fall 2020. Yes.
And there's a clarification, Dr. Walker.
And Dr. Walker, just to clarify, my response to that question was in the event that the student, let's just say if they were not successful in the college prep course and they did not pass the TSI, then we would recommend that the student is still guaranteed a spot in the corequisite model with the assumption that, or with the notion that they've engaged in an intervention in terms of the college prep course. So versus putting them in a standalone DE course or anything, we would recommend that they go into a corequisite model. But I totally agree with you that at the conclusion of the House Bill 5 or the college prep course, that the student would be eligible to go into the first college level course without required support, DE support.
If they pass it,
if they
meet the TSI or retake the TSI. We can wait one more second for questions, but there's a couple things I wanted to mention. So one thing, we sent out a reminder yesterday from Qualtrics about to encourage completion of the DEPS. I will note that the links changed. There was an issue with Qualtrics. So the second, this reminder we sent out yesterday has the correct link. If you try to use the link that's in the original email we sent out on September 11th, it won't work anymore. So use the link that was sent yesterday in the email reminder. But however, if you have issues with the link, or say you completed the survey and you remember you put something in incorrectly, feel free to reach out to me because I can help with link issues. I can reset the link. I can send you a link to edit your responses. So don't hesitate to call or email me, and I can help out with that.
All right, now just threw a call out there for kind of like the last call for questions, and I don't see anybody popping in type of question. So, oh, I see one.
All right.
And if you have any colleagues, that wanted access to the webinar but were unable to attend, we are recording it, and we will make sure that it's available on the Higher Education Coordinating Board's YouTube page within a week. When will the webinar start for the new TSIA? We're anticipating a full launch probably. And I'm thinking probably February. And we know that that's a little late, but there are some pieces that the most critical pieces and answers that you want to know, which are, what are the cut scores going to be? What are the new components? We're still in the process of finalizing those things. We have some answers in terms of the redesign of the assessment and some of the enhancements to the assessment. But as far as like those major questions, we'll have recommendations at that time for to assist you with responding to new scores and considerations. And I'll go ahead and go through a few of the enhancements of the TSIA 2. And real quick, I'll get to that question in 1 second, but the enhancements for the TSIA. So first, we're integrating reading and writing, and that section will most likely be now revised to be called the ELAR. So English, Language, Arts, and Reading, and it'll be one seamless integrated assessment. So whereas now you have reading and writing, it'll just be one assessment that's inclusive of the essay. So ELAR will include the essay. We're working on the transportability of the scores. So under the new assessment, students will have the ability to log into their portal using certain pieces of information, and we're still finalizing those details. And they'll be able to send their scores directly to institutions. In addition to that, one of the enhancements is we're moving away from two diagnostics. So as of now, we have the developmental education diagnostic and the adult basic education diagnostic. We'll only have one diagnostic. So for any student that does not meet the college readiness benchmark, they will be provided with that level 1 through 6 score, whereas now they only get a level 1 through 6 score if they test into the ABE range. So we're hoping to simplify that process with going to one diagnostic, and any student not meeting the college readiness benchmark will be provided with that level 1 through 6 score. If in your head you're already thinking, okay, so well, how is that going to change? Well, students can get a 310 and they're still scoring level 5, 6 on the diagnostic. We're working very, very hard with the selected vendor, who is the current vendor, the College Board, and normalizing all of those questions along the same scale to where we should not have any situations where the college readiness or the placement score, that 310 through 390, is really low, and then the diagnostic score is really high. So we're working diligently to address the psychometric aspects of the assessment as well. And I'm missing one of the enhancements. Oh, the best and brightest. So for those students who do not meet the college readiness benchmark, we're now, the College Board is providing us with individualized and customized learning resources for those students. So it'll give an individualized learning plan for those students with a customized link in their score results to help them with links to information and modules that they can complete to or engage in to help increase their readiness to be successful if they choose to take the TSIA again. And one thing, yeah, I was like, oh, hold off on that one.
Do you want to answer first when the students testing, when the new scores will take effect for students?
The new scores, and I'm going back up to Rachel's question from TWU, and this new scores will apply to students testing after the first day of fall 2020, correct? So the answer to that question is not after, it's on the institution's first class day. So if a student can use their current TSIA scores all the way up until the first class day for placement. So essentially, if they don't take a college level course and it doesn't have to be TSI related, but the scores have to be used for placement. If they do not take a college level course in that fall semester and they come to enroll in the spring, they will have to retest. So if for those who have partnerships through dual credit, this is something that we're already integrating as part of our training through the College Board, and we'll actually be, the team that's in the room now will actually be traveling to Waco tomorrow to be with the College Board as they train K-12 test administrators, and we'll be sharing some of this information as well. So just note that the students have to use the scores for placement in the fall 2020 semester. And if you need clarification, please feel free, shoot me an email, and I have some already prepared slides that I can, 2 slides specifically addressing this question that I could shoot right back to you. Probably not by the end of the day, it'll probably be Thursday because I'll be out on tomorrow.
Elizabeth's question has to do with the individualized learning software question. And Elizabeth, that's a good question. We are asking if you use individualized learning software at all in your developmental ed instruction, answer that question. It applies. It doesn't have to be the only thing being used. We just would like to know if you are using anything like that and what it is. We also have a question in that section about open educational resources as well, which is similar. If you happen to be using OER within the DE curriculum, we would love to hear about that because we think other people around the state would like to know how much this is happening.
And I believe that brings us to the end, ladies and gentlemen. So we do thank you for taking your time out of your day, rescheduling to be with us. So I definitely want to pay homage there. And again, if you need any individualized support, definitely do not hesitate to reach out to us as you move forward in the completion of the DEPS. You'll get gentle nudges just to be reminded as we approach the completion date. And again, do your best to meet that completion date. We do not want the email saying that your institution did not complete it on time to be escalated to your chief academic officer. So if you are the primary or secondary contact, we're at your disposal. I can't stress that enough in terms of helping you meet the goal of the deadline.
I meant to say this earlier, but I think it says when you finish the DEPS, it says you can get a PDF version of your answers, but I've heard from a few people who have finished it that either the button's not working or it's not showing up or something like that. But if after you complete, you would like to have a PDF copy of your responses so you can look at them again or send them to somebody, shoot me an email and I can easily pull that and send that to you. I've already been doing that for several people. But I just, from what I've heard from people, it's not very clear how to do that within the survey. So I'm happy to send you a copy of that after you complete it. That's all I have.
All right. And then the only other thing I would encourage you, if by chance you have different people going into the link to complete varied sections, before you submit, make sure that all of the questions are answered. We don't want to have a situation where you submit and then we have to follow back up with you and say that you missed certain questions. We have it open in that way so you can have different people complete certain portions of the DEPS. So we're intentional with that functionality to offer you a broader use of the tool, but just be certain that before you hit submit that all of the questions definitely are answered. All right. So again, we thank you for taking time out of your day to attend the technical assistance webinar for the Developmental Education Program Survey. And again, for those who are not able to attend, or if you want to review any information discussed within, it'll be posted on the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board's YouTube page within a week. Thank you, and you all have a great day and keep up the good work you're doing with our students across the state of Texas.
Thank you.
Have a great day.